Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nisi.
When the University of Rhode Island invited state leaders for a major announcement this month, the setting wasn't URI's leafy green campus in Kingston. It was the Providence headquarters of lottery giant GTech. That's where URI has opened a new business engagement center, a centrally located hub for companies to connect with the resources of Rhode Island's flagship university. URI President David Dooley says the new center will benefit students too.
We want them to be successful. And part of what it means for them to be successful is to create opportunities for them to learn in ways that we cannot provide on our campus, and those opportunities for learning are frequently found in the private sector.
It's been 4 years since Dooley left Montana to take the helm at URI. How does he see the university's role in promoting economic development? This week on Executive Suite, the president of the University of Rhode Island, David Dooley.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Dr. Dooley, thanks for being here.
Great to see you, Ted.
And we have tons of different things I want to ask you about, but I want to start off like we talked about in the introduction about this new Business Engagement Center. You opened it, you had a big shebang there down at the GTech headquarters. What is it? What is the Business Engagement Center?
The Business Engagement Center is primarily designed to do two things. One, it's to serve as a portal, a one-stop shopping center, if you will, to act so that the private sector and, frankly, communities and nonprofits as well can access all the assets of the university. And it's also intended to be a mechanism by which we can develop and manage close working relationships and partnerships with the business community and the private sector.
Why'd you pick GTech as the headquarters for? We think of URI as a South County institution.
A couple of reasons. One, GTech is an institution that employs a lot of URI alums. And secondly, it's been an institution with whom we've worked very productively. And in particular, we had some great examples of how a corporate university partnership can work to benefit both the corporation, in this case, GTech, and the university.
Obviously a central location as well
Central
in Providence.
location. As you know, URI is working very hard to increase its profile and footprint in Providence. We've got a number of things going up there now, including the MBA program, which is based in Providence. So it's a way for us to keep reinforcing the notion that really the University of Rhode Island is Providence's university, just as it's the rest of the state's university.
So I want to get people maybe watching, they hear about the Business Engagement Center, they think, is this for me? Is it for just a big company like CVS? Is it for only a tiny little startup small business? Who can use the Business Engagement Center, and how would they use it?
Well, basically anybody can use the Business Engagement Center. So whether you're a small business with half a dozen employees or even fewer, or you're a TACO, a CVS, a GTech, a Torrey, Raytheon, Electric Boat, you can use some of the things that URI has to offer. And so if you're looking for interns, if you're looking for consulting help, if you're looking for someone to do contract research to help you in product development and innovation, you can come to URI and get that kind of assistance.
Sounds almost like a concierge to help an ambassador between the institution and the university and what the business needs.
Absolutely, that's a very good analogy.
And you got the idea, I gather, from the University of Michigan. They have 7 years, they've had their own business engagement center. You called it the gold standard. Why? What did you see there, and why did you want to bring it to URI?
Okay. Well, one of the things that impressed me about the University of Michigan in particular is they started on a very small scale, a single individual in a single college. And in very short order, they've grown it to a statewide network that involves other universities, including Michigan State and Wayne State University, in addition to the University of Michigan.
Got beyond the sports rivalries, they were able to work together.
Absolutely. Not that they still don't fight each other tooth and nail on the field.
Of course.
But what they've done is, I think, had a dramatic positive impact on the Michigan economy, starting from a small concept and then growing it over time. And I thought, okay, we can translate that experience to Rhode Island. We can start at a scale that we can afford at the University of Rhode Island. If we're successful, we can grow it, and we can be confident that we can have a real positive impact on the Rhode Island economy by doing that.
And you mentioned TACO, and I think they're one of the companies that's already planning to take advantage of some of the stuff being offered. What's TACO doing with the business?
We're going to do an MBA program with them, specifically for their employees. We have done that for other companies in the past. We have worked with groups like South County Hospital, for instance, on supply chain management in addition. So our business college, I think, has been very aggressive about building these kinds of partnerships. But so has the rest of the university, engineering, the Harrington School of Communications. We have a variety of partnerships now that span the entire university, from things like writing and rhetoric, which surprisingly was one of the things that attracted GTech to partner with the University of Rhode Island in a deeper way, was working with our writing and rhetoric program to produce better writers of proposals that would then go into the GTech business model. So I think what we're really trying to do is make the entire university accessible to potential partners in Rhode Island.
And when I was talking to people about having you on the show this week, they said, "Oh, I thought that was really more of a business show." And I said, well, I think especially with all the talk at Smith Hill about economic development over the last year, URI came up constantly. And I'm curious, how do you see the university's role in helping to develop the Rhode Island economy? And how important do you think it is as part of the networks and what makes up the economy here?
Well, first of all, URI in and of itself has a major economic impact on the state. Over $100 million in research. For example, that employs people, that produces new intellectual property that can be transferred to the private sector, that can help drive innovation in the state. So that's an important element, or an important contribution of what URI brings to the state. But beyond that, and exemplified by the Business Engagement Center, it is really an intrinsic part of our mission as a public land-grant research university, the state's only public research university, to find ways to help grow the state's economy. That's part of why we were created in the Morrill Act back in the 1860s, in the height of the Civil War.
Abe Lincoln, yeah.
It's still part of what a land-grant university is all about. So this isn't peripheral to us, it's central.
I want to talk now some more about state policy toward URI, kind of flows into that. But before we get to that, we're getting up near a break, and I did want to ask, you mentioned Providence specifically too. People might not be aware of how much URI has grown and how much you're doing in Providence. Give me a sense of the scope of activities that happens in Providence, how much people are doing now here.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. One, as you know, we now base the MBA program in Providence. Secondly, we have a very important program in biotechnology manufacturing. That's based in Providence, a very competitive, extremely productive undergraduate degree program that's taught entirely up here. We have a host of programs that are taught out of the Shepherd's Building for students who are located in Providence. We partner with CCRI at our Providence campus. We have a lot of partnerships with groups like Lifespan and Care New England and Brown that again occur in Providence. We have major research operations in Providence, and you may have read about some of our success in iCubed, our Institute for Informational Informatics, about bringing in major research funding to support research. That research operation is based in Providence. So one of the things that we're really trying to capitalize on are our natural, I think, programmatic focus around the business community and healthcare and so forth that exists in Providence, and add other components of what the university is doing here.
One other thing before we go to the break, since we're talking about Providence, the Dynamo House, the South Street Power Station, whatever people want to call that big hulk of a building along the river, been empty for quite a while. Brown, URI, RIC, all saying they're going to work together to redevelop it, partly into a URI RIC nursing school. Brown going to use it for some other things. But there was certainly some controversy among state lawmakers about the scope of that toward the end of this session. Is that still on track? And when do you see ground being broken, maybe? How far away are we from actually building something at the Dynamo House with that partnership?
That's a good question. Things are on track. We're working weekly and very much appreciate the involvement of Richard Leach,
Governor Chafee's Director of Administration.
Director of Administration in this process. We're meeting with him weekly. He's leading the state sort of team that's working with us. We're working regularly with Brown and with the developer, Dick Galvin, Commonwealth Ventures, who Brown has selected to do this project. We're meeting regularly with them. Planning is underway. We're putting the pieces together so that early in the next session, frankly, as early as the next assembly session, as early as possible from my perspective, we want to bring to the governor and to the General Assembly a complete package that says, here are the plans, here are the details of the financial arrangements involved in the lease, here are the long-term plans for the developments and utilization of the spaces, here's what the financing looks like. We're ready to go with your approval.
All right, we're overdue for a break. When we come back, we're going to talk more about how the General Assembly and state policy affects the University of Rhode Island and what they made of that big bomb scare that happened up there earlier this year. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and I'm pleased to be joined this week, made it all the way up from Kingston, by the 11th president of the University of Rhode Island, Dr. David Dooley. People might not know you started your career in Massachusetts, right? You were at Amherst College?
That's where I started my academic career.
As a chem professor?
As a chemistry professor at Amherst College, that's right.
Did you teach organic chem? That scared a lot of my friends out of being doctors.
I did.
Did you fail a lot of people?
No, we didn't, actually.
No?
Amherst students were pretty
Amherst
smart.
Such a friendly place, too. Yeah. All right, so I want to talk about state policy toward URI, and I have to start, and I hope viewers, you don't fall asleep on me on this, but the merger of the education boards. This has been a big topic of conversation. I remember the night I was sitting on the floor looking at the state budget as it came out in House Finance, and we all started to buzz. We said, I think they just merged the two education boards into one, and it happened pretty abruptly and all that. And so now you have one all-volunteer board running K through 12 through college, overseeing all that in Rhode Island. I've certainly heard some concerns, not directly from you, Dr. Dooley, but from others, about whether there's the bandwidth to do all the things K-12 needs and look at college in one board. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I think we do have to recognize that what this particular board has been tasked to do is actually unique. We had at the board retreat, they had a nationally prominent expert in higher education governance come in, Ames McGinnis, who's worked with
just a few weeks ago, the board had a retreat, the ed board.
And he spoke to this question and said that, to his knowledge, no other board had this set of responsibilities and duties.
In the United States.
In the United States. That it was a unique situation that now existed in Rhode Island, and they would have to develop some unique strategies in order to cope with it. Because whereas they serve as a policy board and a sort of a regulatory board for K-12, their traditional role has been a governing board for higher education. And those are two very different sets of activities. And this new board has to find a way to be both a governing board for higher education and a policy and regulatory board for K-12 simultaneously. That's a big challenge.
My colleague Dan McGowan reported on our website, PRI.com, last month that some state leaders now considering backtracking, going back to two boards. Have you been approached at all about merging, unmerging, any of that, and do you have a preference?
I haven't had a conversation about it, frankly, with anyone since the decision was made to merge the two boards. I mean, offhand conversations about how's it going and what does the landscape look like going forward for the University of Rhode Island. Of course, we've had those conversations all the time. But nothing substantive and substantial with regard to reviewing that decision. I think the situation is this. For the time being, we have a single board. It's in our interest and everybody's interest that we try to make that work as effectively and efficiently as possible. Because quite honestly, we can't wait for any other strategy to come along. Mm-hmm. Our agenda is too important to the state. It's too important to our students. We need to help find ways to make this board effective and functional, fully functional as it's constituted now. And we'll let others worry about whether that is good enough in the long run or whether they want to look at some other solution.
Now, some people watching might think, well, you know, if they think like a corporation, Dr. Dooley's the CEO of URI, and a board usually just goes along with the CEO. I mean, does it affect you if the board is able to take decisions? How much does it really matter whether the board is being able to give a significant amount of time to URI versus all its other responsibilities?
Well, current state statutes actually delegate a lot of authority to that board as the successor to the Board of Governors. So we need to go to that board for approvals of many different kinds of things that, if we don't get those approvals in a timely way, can be actually damaging to the institution. So the board's functions are very important to us in higher education. We need them to be attentive, responsive, and engaged with us. And so that's what we're working with them to see if we can make sure that all of that happens in this new merged structure.
Another big change under the Assembly, the annual appropriation, the line item in the state budget that went to help fund URI dropped from $82 million in 07 to $56 million in 2010. A huge drop. The Chafee administration has gotten it back up to $64 million for this year. Obviously, you're always going to advocate for more money for your institution, but that was one of the biggest cuts of any state in the country based on the research I've seen. How did that affect URI, and what was the impact you've seen on campus?
Well, it was. I mean, Rhode Island led the nation, frankly, in the pace at which it reduced funding for public higher education, and particularly for the public research university, the University of Rhode Island. I don't think that's something you want to lead the nation in, to be honest, and it had exactly the effect you would expect. our costs per student have stayed pretty constant. They've incremented up by less than inflation. But as you reduce state funding to the institution, those costs don't get any less either. And so you tend to sort of make up for the reductions in state funding by raising tuition for the students. And so if you look inside the University of Rhode Island's budgets, that's exactly what you see. As state funding declined, tuition revenue rose. It had to rise by even more than the decline in state funding, because one of the things you have to do as you raise tuition is provide more financial aid. I think our financial aid this last year was up around $80 million. That's a big number that we generate. And we have to generate that from tuition revenues so that we can use it for students who really need it. And that's the biggest effect that we've seen. And we're quite concerned about the long-term, I think, problems that causes for the people of Rhode Island with regard to affordability for higher ed and access.
All right, we're going to talk much more about that in the next segment. When we come back, we're going to talk about we're up to 50% of the students at URI are now out of state. And we're also going to talk, as I said, about policy on guns on campus police. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi, and I'm joined by URI President Dr. David Dooley. We could do an hour or more on all this, but we only have a half hour left, so I want to keep moving. I mentioned right before the break, half of URI students are now from out of state. I looked it up. UMass, it's about 21%, obviously a bigger state, more, et cetera. But is that good? Is that bad? What do you make of that, the fact that half of the students at URI are coming from out of Rhode Island now?
Well, on the whole, I think it's a very good thing. I mean, for a couple of reasons. One, I think it's very good for educationally. One of the things that we strive to do at the University of Rhode Island is build a diverse community, because students learn really important things when they're a part of a community where not everybody's like them. And so bringing students in from across the nation and outside the nation, across the world, I think really creates a favorable learning environment for our students at the University of Rhode Island. Secondly, I mean, even though our entering classes now are more than 50% non-resident, we're still offering admission to the University of Rhode Island to every qualified Rhode Island student. But the number of Rhode Islanders who are graduating from high school qualified to go to the University of Rhode Island is decreasing.
Really?
Yes.
That's a
demographic trend that has been underway now for a couple of years and will continue for many more.
Just because there's fewer students?
There are fewer
young
students
people?
in the pipeline. And so obviously for us, that means we're going to look for students outside of Rhode Island to come in and make sure we have the mix of students and the critical mass of students that we need.
When you look at those Rhode Island students, one reason given for merging that Board of Education was that students were coming out of high school not prepared for college in Rhode Island. Do you see evidence of that? Does that concern you, or is that really more of a problem for CCRI and RIC?
Well, I think it's a major problem for CCRI, which as the access institution for students graduating from Rhode Island high schools really has to confront that mission head on. Obviously, students who are not qualified for college, haven't completed the curriculum, haven't demonstrated that they have the capability to succeed at URI. We admit very few of those students. We'll admit some that we think have the talent to succeed at the University of Rhode Island, but for whatever reason may not have all the classes that we require, may not have performed quite as well as we would expect, but we're willing to take a chance on them. The talent development program at URI has been enormously successful to provide opportunity to students. But for the most part, we don't have the same problems with that as CCRI. That said, I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of our faculty on the University of Rhode Island campus who aren't concerned about what they're seeing in their students coming out of high school, who are admissible to the University of Rhode Island in terms of the capabilities that they have.
Is that a Rhode Island-specific problem they see, or you think that's across most high schools? Or other parts of the country too?
I think it's a national problem to many degrees, and that is that we're simply not succeeding at the level of particularly junior high and high school in preparing our students for post-secondary education as well as we probably were a couple decades ago.
You got nearly 21,000 applications for new freshmen and another 1,400 transfer applications. You accepted fewer than 4,000. Do you think there's a case for making URI significantly bigger than it is now?
You know, there's room for some growth at the University of Rhode Island. Particularly, we're interested in seeing more graduate students at the university to help fuel the research mission of the institution and expand our scholarly impact, and that has a big positive economic benefit, I think, to the state as well. We're looking to bring more international students to the campus because we think a global perspective on the campus is very important. But we're not looking at major growth because we want to make sure that we maintain quality. And until we see the evidence that allows us to generate the resources so that we can maintain quality as we increase enrollment, then we're going to be very cautious about growing the enrollment of the university.
Totally different track, but I've mentioned that there was that bomb scare. It wasn't a bomb in the end on the campus. So
gun scare.
Gun scare. Yeah, gun scare. Thank you. I keep saying bomb scare. Too much of that going on in the country right now.
Much too much.
First of all, when will a decision be made on arming campus police? That was a quick discussion afterwards. Where does that stand right now?
Yeah, it was a quick discussion because what we needed to do was determine whether the board, which has the ultimate authority on this in terms of granting permission, was prepared to look at that. It's been before the board in the past, and it's really never had the green light or the approval from the board for us to seriously consider arming the police. So obviously the first step was to address this question with the board. As you know well, the board actually authorized the individual campuses ultimately to examine this question and to make a decision. And that was an important first step. But we have a process to follow at the University of Rhode Island. We want it to be a participatory process. We're going to involve faculty. We're going to involve students and staff. We're going to just really have a rich discussion around the pros and cons of arming, and we'll make a final decision on that sometime this fall.
Sometime this fall. And you are on record. You're in favor of arming the police.
I am.
So we're getting down toward the end of the show, but you have a new school year starting. You have more than 16,000 students just started classes September 4th. We talked about the Business Engagement Center. What else are you excited about this coming academic year?
Well, it's exciting just to have the students back, first of all. It's always good to see them come back. It's good to see their enthusiasm and energy for education, for what they think it will mean to their futures. That's always very energizing. We have a great honors colloquium this fall that's underway. It's on the future of public education. Couldn't be more timely for the state. It's going to have a great group of national and internationally recognized participants, panelists, and speakers. So we're really looking forward to that. We're launching and growing a number of new programs. Health studies, health sciences continues to grow, for instance. We have new facilities that are coming fully operational. We'll open the wellness facility for students this fall. We hope to break ground in the chemistry building this fall. That'll be a big step forward for us. That's a critically needed facility. So there's a lot going on that we're pretty excited about.
Sounds good. All right. Well, that's all the time we have this week. Dr. Dooley, thank you so much for being with me. If you missed any of this show or any other episode of Executive Suite, you can always catch those on our newly redesigned WPRI.com. Don't forget, Saturday mornings, check out the Saturday Morning Post on Nisi's Notes. And we'll be looking to see what's happening at URI. We'll be keeping up with Dr. Dooley throughout the rest of the academic year. See you next week on Executive Suite.
Thank you.